All right, for all the carrying on about transparency, we're finally starting to get some of it, and that's a good thing, even if what we see when we first open the door is a little bit scary. Contessa has the details on that. Hi, Contessa.
Okay, so here's what we found on recovery.gov. $2.5 million spent to purchase sliced ham. Again, that's on recovery.gov.
Yeah.
The USDA is firing back to the criticism. Quote, the Recovery Act funds allowed states to purchase ham, cheese, and dairy products for food banks, for soup kitchens, food pantries. The press reports suggesting that the Recovery Act spent millions to buy 2 pounds of ham are wrong. In fact, the contract in question purchased hundreds of thousands of pounds of ham. Also spent $351,000 to replace and upgrade a dumbwaiter in Brooklyn, New York. There's the USDA statement. Let's move on. $541,000 to fix a traffic signal in Hawaii. But you know, you need a traffic signal fixed if it's broken, and if it costs $500,000 to fix everything in Hawaii is more expensive, you know.
Yeah. It's kind of like the New York Knicks once again. We are a country that's phenomenally good at spending absurd sums of money out of our government and getting as little as possible for it, whether it's a canned ham or a traffic light. Jake Brewer from the watchdog group, the Sunlight Foundation, who has made the quest for transparency a full-time job, not just Jake, but those he works with. Jake, we're starting to get some of the transparency that modern technology allows for. There's a good chuckle to be had here for sure, because again, the pricing and the record keeping are terrible in many cases. But is this a beginning of a positive road? In other words, have we cracked the egg here in the sense that we're now starting to see where the cockroaches are, and then the more we look at it, the less of the type of thing that Contessa was talking about there will be?
I think absolutely that we are. I mean, in many ways, the fact that we're airing this segment at all is an indication that we're on the right track. You know, Vivek Kundra and Anish Chopra, the federal chief information officer and chief technology officer, have the hardest jobs in Washington, if you ask me. We really admire what they're up to and the goals that they've set forth. But, you know, here we have an example of where, as you said, a 19th century government is coming head to head with a 21st century government, and you have situations where you're describing
I say 21st century
awfully.
Society. That's a 21st century society with a 19th century government, and so we suffer because we're like, I can't keep track. It's like we might as well be using leeches to cure cancer the way we run our government.
Right. Well, I mean, even the tools that we now have available. So recovery.gov is an excellent website that was set up. It's a beginning. But they did call for the highest ideals when it was announced from the Office of Management and Budget, the highest ideals of transparency and accountability, and we love that. But it needs to be what the American people's definition of transparency and accountability is, and not what the government's traditional definition of transparency and accountability is.
And that's why Karen and Jonathan, both of you on this, how do they fulfill their obligation to the American people as any employee would if they were spending all your money, to show us how they're spending the money? Yeah. And at the same time, they have to go through the transition that any business would have to go through, or any group of people would have to go through to get their house in order if they're going to have to start showing everybody the books all the time.
Yeah, you know, this is the kind of thing where transparency is a great thing to campaign on and talk about, but then there's sort of the practical reality. I mean, they've really opened themselves up here to, you know, people being able to, you know, sort of cherry pick little bits of information and then question it, rather than sort of having an ongoing conversation with the American people from the beginning about how the money was being spent, why it was being spent a certain way. I mean, you know, when you hear, you know, all that money spent on ham, that sounds ridiculous. But when you hear that those hams actually went to food banks, and we know that in this economy more people are relying on food banks, you think, well, that makes a lot more sense.
But what that makes me think about is this. It's not just a spending problem in D.C., it's also a record-keeping problem, because the reason that ends up happening, Jonathan, is because the guy at the government says, how much with $2 million? Just put 2 pounds of ham. It's ham for everybody. It's as if, you know, we're at NBC and we're like, listen, $44,000 a month for the newspapers. Well, and then you put it out, you're like, one newspaper for Dylan, 44,000. Well, no, it's newspapers for all of 30 Rock. In other words, you got a couple. If you're going to do this, you need record keeping to go with it.
Look, Dylan, yes, you need record keeping to go with it, but I think it's incumbent upon all of us not to have knee-jerk reactions to what we're seeing on that site. And, you know, it's great to slam the government for, you know,
let's celebrate the government.
It's one thing to slam the government for basically, you know, deli sandwiches for everyone, but without delving deep deeper and seeing what that money is being used for, I think, does a disservice and actually makes it harder for folks at recovery.gov to do their jobs. Who wants to have sunlight on them and try to do the right thing if what they're doing is easily mischaracterized and caricatured?
And I guess
But
my
Jonathan,
point, Karen, though, is it doesn't matter. In other words, if you are going to take trillions of dollars from a group of people every year for good reasons, the national defense, all these things, it is not unreasonable, particularly in the context of modern technology and with the track record from Blagojevich to the bank. These people have lost their chance. I would go ahead, Steve, and then I got to go.
It was the Obama, it was Barack Obama and his administration talking about transparency. But here you have, as the Wall Street Journal reported, how you've got the Treasury declining to require bailout recipients to reveal what they're doing with government dollars. This is not difficult. This is very, very simple. I understand there are reasons for doing and not doing an abundance of things, but we are in an absolute mess. Clearly the system has been exploited by the few who are looking to benefit themselves at the expense of the whole. Something as simple as honoring your word to be a bit more transparent. We certainly shouldn't be in a position where the Wall Street Journal is sitting there telling us that the Treasury Department refuses to be transparent.
And the least we could do as journalists is request that the lights be turned on and that the technologies of the 21st century be applied to our government to help ease them out of the 19th century and into the 21st century with everybody else. We're going to take a break. Jake, a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope to see more of you around here. Jake Brewer from the Sunlight Foundation. Jonathan, I think, has to go back to his morning meeting at 10:30. You leave us every day at 10:30. You have been great, Jonathan, that you've been here every day. I hope to continue to see you. Karen, we won't let Stephen A. Smith, he's a bully.
Oh, not at all. Not at all, Karen. Don't listen to that.
Anyway.
Bring it on.
Not at all.
I got to take a break. We're back. We'll sell some insurance fraud, marijuana, oil drilling, but again, not there yet. We're back with after this commercial right now.